For mounting your box blanks, you have two choices. Mount it in a chuck, which means you have to change the chuck for every single cut you make, or using waste blocks. And waste blocks is what I picked up from the class with Bonnie. They are your friend. I have waste blocks like this for mounting the box blanks on, and I'll get more into that. I have waste blocks like this. These are threaded on the inside, so these are basically for once you part the bottom off, then you can screw it into this and you can finish turn the bottom. I need to make more of these. One of these days I'll get them all numbered so I know which size is which. This is a locking nut. Your standard nuts are much thinner and they're not going to get you enough clearance to have this totally off the lathe. These are available any of your big box stores or any of your fastening stores. These are what I got. These are 1 inch by 8 threads per inch, which fits your standard mini lathe. If you want to get 8 threads per inch ones that are 1.25 inches, you have to custom order those. They are available. I like the mini lathe better. So first thing you have to do, I use a spacer block here. You have to get rid of this nylon ring that's in there. And basically I turn that out. I true this face, then I turn it around, true up this face too. This is mostly so it sits flat against the headstock. So this is a standard little scraper, about a 70-degree bevel on both sides. Just a plunge cut. Down till you hit metal. And that's pretty much all that needs. I do like to true up this face. Your standard high-speed steel will have no problems with this. Mostly these nuts are not precision milled. So this has been turned out, mostly that's so you can thread this all the way down onto your lathe headstock spindle. So next, mount it in a chuck. And I'm going to true up the other side. May not need to do this one since I put this into a waste block, but I always do it anyway just out of kind of general principles. And my cutting speed here, or lathe speed, is about 1900 RPMs. I'm not used to having a lathe that has readouts on it. And that's good enough for that part. That's done. Now my waste blocks, next ones I'm going to make them a little bit bigger. I figure 2 inches is more than you need, mostly because I don't ever turn boxes bigger than that. To fit this nut, this is 1 5/8 and I've drilled it, a good 1/4 inch down. And I want to press fit into that. Next step, you want to epoxy this in. Okay, for the epoxies, I like these 2-part ones like this. I like 30-minute open time on it. Most of the big box stores have 5-minute epoxies now, and that doesn't really give you enough working time for them. Process is to squirt this into something like this. This is a glue syringe. There are epoxy syringes. There are wallpaper syringes. The first one I got was for wallpaper. I went back 10 years later and they didn't have any of them. You can Google those. I know there are sources out there for them. Preferences for the clear ones, but I'll get all of this basically in about 2 different loadings of this. Squirt it in, use a bamboo shish kebab skewer to stir it all up, put your plunger back in, and I usually profile this tip a little bit but get it down inside, squirt this down in there, and basically that's going to seal it, or it'll keep it seated. And I did try some medium CA glue, the first ones I ever did. And 2 or 3 days later, I'm turning them and I had super glue flying out all over the place. When you put that medium CA glue in thick, it just takes it a long time to set up and actually cure and harden. And here's one that's been epoxied in. These waste blocks, when they get worn down too thin like that, and it took another video by Bonnie for me to figure this out, we just glue another piece of wood on top of it. And it's like, oh yeah, and then these, basically your seat there is going to last forever. For these blanks here, you want the surface to be dead flat. The last thing you want is like a slight hump in the middle, because you're never going to get a secure glue thing there. I don't like them concave, mostly because when I turn the blank, I'll actually round it off a little bit when I get near the bottom. And if it's concave, you need a gap filling glue, which is like your medium or your thick CA glue. And again, you run into the same problem with it. It takes that stuff days to set up and cure. So this one, I check with a straight edge. That's pretty close. I will take a pass across. This is a little spindle detail gouge. Check it for straight or for flat. I have just a tiny concave in the very center, and the outside parts are flat, which to me is perfect. And next, I put some little rings in here. Mostly those are centering marks for when I glue my box halves on here. For wood selection, basically I like as straight of grain to wood as I can possibly get. This is a piece of tamarind. I wouldn't know what a tamarind tree was if it fell on me, but picked up part of somebody's collection. This is a piece of almond, and if you have grain like this, by the time you take out the tenon part here, your grain's never going to match up. And you can do one like this, but you have to basically part it off, turn a recess on the inside, and then you can thread the sleeve. That works. It's a lot of extra work, which makes me think of it would be really handy if somebody had an XY jig just for putting a cutter in, so you could make your waste blocks perfectly flat in one try, and you could make your tenon and recess cuts perfectly flat in one try. So tamarind, and I'll show you how to rough these out. Basically, with wood, I don't like making them any bigger diameter than this. I had a piece that fell off my tabletop at a show once. It laid in the grass for the weekend. I picked it up after the weekend. I thought somebody had stole it. And the lid would come off, but it is definitely tight, loose as it goes around, and wood always moves, especially if you're moving from one part of the country to another. So to rough turn this, use a chuck. And again, I'm turning at the same speeds. It's about 1900 RPM. I like a skew chisel for this. I use a peeling cut, which I learned from Eric Lofstrom, and I really love that. Very efficient at removing lots of waste in a very short time. So peeling cut, you kind of cut on a tangent, so you start high, lower the edge. I do kind of eyeball down to the bed of my lathe to see if this is fairly straight. A little more. That's good. And for gluing up purposes, this needs to be dead flat all the way across. Generally, I don't do that with a spindle detail gouge. I like a negative rake scraper for that. And this is another essential tool you need. These are 6-inch machinist rules. Several uses here. And I got lucky on this one. That's dead flat first time. So reverse it. Close enough. I need to make this dead flat again. Close. See how flat that is? I got that one dead flat too. So generally I like the rule of thirds. So basically about a third of the way down be my lid. About this much for the tenon part. And so I'll part this off. I do like a thin parting tool for this. Yeah, nice and dark. Okay. Now I'll show you how to hollow out the lid first time, so I need to get this out of here. Okay, so the lid, I'm going to hollow this out first. And with these boxes too, I don't care how long your wood has been sitting in the shop, you need to rough turn them because wood always, and I mean always, adjusts to having bulk removed. So this is a spindle detail gouge. It does work kind of like a spoon bit. I do not know that Richard Raffin upside down backwards cut. He does talk about it. He's got a video up on YouTube about it. And the number one thing he said is make sure you don't get the nose of the gouge stuck in the wood when you're trying this. So nose is in, pull it back a little bit. Imagine you guys can hardly see anything there. Yeah, we can leave that caption there. Okay. And I do try to leave at least 1/4 of an inch thickness here. Mostly when you glue them onto your waste block, you never get them perfectly centered, and you're going to have to true them up after you get done with that. So get this one out of here and do the bottom. I don't worry about chuck marks here because they're all going to come off anyway when you return it. So. I'm going to call that good. And what I do after this point, it's a trick I learned from Richard Raffin. Some blue tape, tape the top and bottom together. Put it on a shelf for 6 months or so, just basically forget about it, and then come back and turn it again. And if you've seen Eric Lofstrom, he has these, he used to call them cloud boxes, he's got another name for them, but they've got a 1-inch tenon on them, and the lid's 3 to 5 seconds before, if you pick it up by the lid, before the bottom drops off. And he turns those down over a period of about 6 months. Turns it again, turns it again, turns it again, and he says that helps stabilize the wood. With this size, I don't think that's necessary, but again, I don't like going any bigger diameter than this. So this box measures now about 1 5/8 inches. That means it'll probably be down to about 1.5 inches by the time it's final turned, and that's, again, I don't like going any bigger than that. For gluing these on, I use Tight Bond or Elmer's glue works fine. When I had the workshop with Bonnie, we glued our blanks on, came back out after we ate lunch and turned them. I prefer to let mine sit overnight, but basically put a bunch of glue on the bottom. I like to spin it around a couple of times just to make sure that the glue is spread evenly all the way around, and then your rings help keep you pretty centered.